Hi there. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking to you about the leader within, creating a leadership lifestyle. As you probably have noticed in the news, there's a lot of ineffective leaders. All we have to do is take a little look down south to our neighbors, and you'll see there's a lot of people that end up in leadership positions that are just ineffective. They don't have the skills in order to be in those positions. And it's important, if you want to be a leader in your community, to first learn how to lead in your own life. And I want to spend a few minutes just talking about two things first before we get into some strategies that you can use. The first one is pre-forgiveness. You need to be in a position to pre-forgive yourself and others, because if you're going to be in a leadership situation, both in your own life and in the community, you are going to make mistakes. But it is paramount, because this does not happen with a lot of leaders if you've had a chance to watch the news. If you make a mistake, you admit to it, and you look for a strategy so it doesn't happen again. That's the first crux to being a leader. Too many leaders make mistakes and they try to hide them for too long. We've seen it with prime ministers, we've seen it with presidents, we've seen it with dictators, where they get into a situation, they're caught, and they deny, and then they end up in more trouble than if they just admitted to it, asked for forgiveness, and moved on. So you need to make sure that you're especially be ready to forgive yourself when you make a mistake. Don't get hard on yourself. It's number one in leadership. The other one I want to talk about comes from a book I read by Viktor Frankl called A Man's Search for Meaning. He was in a concentration camp during World War II and managed to survive. And one of the key components of that book was the one freedom that nobody can take away from you is how you choose to react in any given situation. I'll give you a little story from my own life in regards to that and how true I really believe that is. When I was younger, I got into a lot of trouble and when I got into trouble, unfortunately, I was told by teachers and counselors that I was a terrible person. And one counselor actually told me when I was doing some counseling with him, he said, "I don't know why you're bothering to look into any, what you're going to do after high school, because the bottom line is you're heading for jail." My problem was I allowed their impression of me become who I was. It wasn't until I was kicked out of school, and then when luckily my father moved to another town, and I was put back into school. Unfortunately, I continued down the same road that I was on, doing some pretty crummy things in class and building my bad reputation up again. When one teacher by the name of Tom Kerr took me aside one day after school, I thought I was being reprimanded and I was going to be in trouble again. But he sat me down and he looked straight at me. He says, "You have a ton of great potential. Why are you spending it doing such negative things in your life? Why don't you turn that potential around and do positive things?" It was the first time somebody talked to me and saw in me the possibility, the absolute possibility that I might actually be something different than someone that was going to end up in jail. That seed was planted. It did take a while. I didn't instantly turn around and become better, but I did. That literally nurtured inside of me. And I was at the end of my career, because I am now a retired teacher. I can look back upon the fact that I was taught leadership for 25 years. I was awarded a variety of different leadership awards, both by the National Student Leadership Association and our British Columbia provincial one, as well as getting the Prime Minister's Teaching Excellence Award, which was put together by some of my students, other staff members, and some parents, which was a great honor. So I went from the possibility of being in jail to actually being able to end my career on a high note, knowing that I did reach a lot of my potential. I still look for things to do. One of the reasons I'm doing this video right now is the hope that in some way I can plant a seed with you as well. But it came from the fact is, when I was younger, I did not realize the one freedom they can't take away is how I choose to react. I reacted based on what I was told. However, when Tom Kerr gave me a different paradigm to look at, that was the beginning of the start that I guess I do have control. People can't tell me how or what I should do. You need to keep that in mind as you go into the potential of wanting to be a leader in the community. want to spend a few minutes around talking about some strategies, habits. The blueprint I used in my leadership class for many years was from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Covey. I had my students go through the book because it was very hard read in the sense it was written for middle management adults. It wasn't written for students, and the students went through and came and created their examples that they could use for the 7 habits as they went through, and it was very effective. It was amazing to see what students actually did with those habits in the school, in the community, and now in their adult lives. It was very exciting to see. The first one that I want to talk about is being proactive. We have a very reactive society. Our medical profession is based on reacting to things. They treat symptoms. They don't look at the cause. When a person gets a headache, there's literally dozens of different headache remedies you could take to get rid of the headache, but nobody takes the time to look at what caused the headache. Being proactive is about looking at the cause of a problem and then fixing it. It's not about masking the symptoms. It's also about not being in a situation of being a victim in a situation. You'll hear, and I'm sure you have heard from people that complain about the government that's in power, that or they complain about their neighbor, or they complain about their friends, or they always continue along the line of being victims. They wait, something happens, and then they complain and blame it on something out there. Being a leader, and the first skill is being proactive. It's taking something on and working towards it. It's taking control of your life as you go through. The second one that's involved with that is from Covey. It was called begin with your end in mind. And if you have a chance, there's a YouTube video by a gentleman by the name of Michael Jr., who's a comedian. It's called "What's Your Why?" And what it is, that and the end in mind are basically looking at what do you want to do with your life. I mean, how much time have you actually sat down? Some people just automatically are lucky. They just, boom, they know exactly what they're going to do, and they go on and they move on. Or something happens in their life and they look at it and say, yeah, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do with my life. And they create that passion. And that's what the beginning of the end in mind, or what your why is all about, is finding a passion. Ideally, that passion will be to make the world a better place. My generation blew that in a lot of ways. We didn't make the world a better place. We have more homelessness now than we've had ever. We have the environmental issues that we're dealing with, and even people are still like ostriches with their head in the sand. We need your generation to look at beginning with an end in mind, which is to fix our problems, and they are fixable. Long term, it's not going to be an easy row, but it's being willing to take risks. It's being willing to stand up against it. Greta Thunberg is a perfect example of that. She's gone around the world, and she's young. You don't have to wait till you're an adult to make a difference. I've seen students make massive differences, and I think that's what I'm hoping in long term will happen to you, is you will look at beginning with an end in mind, figuring out what your why is, getting proactive, and getting out there. The third part is prioritizing. It's getting what's important. Once you know you want to be proactive, once you know what your end in mind or what your why is or what you're passionate about, it's pretty easy to prioritize what's important. Yes, there are times when you're going to want to be with friends. Yes, there's going to be times when you want to play a video game or do whatever that's just fun stuff off to the side. But you want that main focus working towards that passion. Keep in mind this saying, a journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with a single step. If you look at homelessness as a whole, or if you look at the environmental issues as a whole, you just go, I can't fix that. I'm only one person. There's a story about a gentleman walking on the beach after a very high tide, and there's thousands of what you call starfish on the beach, and he sees this little boy taking each starfish one and throwing it back into the water. And the man comes up and says, "What are you doing?" And the little boy says, "Well, I'm throwing them back into the water to save them." And the man looks at him and says, "But there's thousands. There's thousands. You'll never make a difference." And the boy picks up a starfish and throws it in. I'll make a difference to this one, he says. And that's what it's all about. It's about the little things you do, working towards that passion, that goal, that end in mind. that is important. Keep that in mind. Every day you want to be in a situation where you keep in mind that you are made up of more than just this. You are a physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual being. And all of those areas need to be filled. Those gas tanks need to be filled, because if one of them's out of sync, then the rest become out of sync. If you spend too much time doing physical exercise, you'll miss out on the social and the emotional. If you spend too much time on academics only, you miss out on the friends, and you miss out on making sure that you keep yourself healthy, and the spirituality as well. So it's important that you do little things in each of those areas. It's important that you get a little exercise every day. It's also important that maybe once in a while you pick the salad over the fries. That's for the physical part of you. For the mental part, read 10 pages of a leadership type book every day. Just 10 pages. It doesn't have to be a lot, because that stimulates and that gets you thoughts and ideas and working towards your goals. I suggest a book called The Slight Edge. It's well worth reading. It talks about the little things you can do each day, and it's just like I say, it's about slight edge. So then for that, make sure you're reading a book every day. Say something nice. Do a random act of kindness every day. It doesn't have to be anything big, but get into the habit of doing that. And for yourself, for the spiritual aspect, what you want to do is find out. I always told my students, why are you here? Why are you on this earth? What are you going to do to make a difference? And that can be through a variety. It can be organized religion. It can be through yoga. It can be meditation. It can be just doing good things for people. It's up to you to figure out what that spiritual, what's going to fill that spiritual gas tank for you. What I did every day is I have what I call a gratitude rock. And when I start off my morning, I pick it up before I put it in my pocket, and I say to myself, what I'm thankful for, what I'm grateful for, whether it's my grandchildren or my children, or the job I was in, or my health, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, before I take it and put it down out of my pocket, I again go through the same routine, and I just say, what is it today I'm grateful for? What can I do a little better tomorrow? Those are the little things. Again, so you always want to make sure that you're doing something physically, something for the mentally, something socially, emotionally, and something spiritually. Because when all of those are in sync, you can take on the world one step at a time. A journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with a single step. If it's to be, it's up to me. I wish you luck on your personal journey. Take care.